Okay, I want to, as usual, thank everybody for joining us today, May 19th, for another episode of Cruel Justice. I'm your host, Herman Lindsey, and we're empowered by Witness the Innocent. And today we're going to talk about, we always go around the United States and we talk about not just one state, but the death penalty and around the United States and internationally. You know, it's a lot of things that's going on. So we try to bring as much education as possible today. And the thing about it today, we're focusing on Kentucky. We never did anything on Kentucky. So I'm like, I'm gonna sit back and learn this too. I done read some things, but I'm gonna sit back and learn this too. So today I have a special guest from Kentucky, Russell Allen, and I'm gonna allow him to introduce yourself. Russell, can you tell the people who you are and the organization that you're with?
First off, thanks for having us from Kentucky to talk about this. But my name is Russell Allen, and I am a co-director of organizing with the Kentucky Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty.
Wow, that was short. But listen, that's cool. So what originally brought us together was Bill HB 269, and one of the things that I definitely want to point out on this bill is that usually for bills, it's a bill introduced in the House and it's a bill introduced in the Senate, and they go through the committees and then they come together and put language together. So the Senate may vote for this language and the House vote for this language, then we thinking we got a good bill, and then when it get to the bottom line where it get to the floor, it turns around and like they reword it. But in this case, it was very unusual for me. I very rarely see this done, is where it was one bill that floated all the way through. Can you explain that to me? How did that come about?
Yeah, so first off, I just want to give credit to, like I said, we're with Kentucky Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty, and want to give credit to one of the co-founders of that organization that we now work for, Father Pat Delahanty. Him, in addition to Representative Chad McCoy in the House, they worked on that bill before our time. Like myself, I'm a co-director, as well as my co-director, Talisha Lumpkin. But they worked on that bill before that. Basically what they did is got some feedback from the Senate about some language, and I have information on the language, and we'll hopefully get a chance to touch on it a little bit. But basically they just worked back and forth on that language until it kind of came to an agreement on that, and were able to kind of, understand that before the bill got filed. So it's a lot of work that went into this bill, in addition to what we did prior to in other years where it may have actually failed.
So this is something that was considered for years, and that's like a lot of times when they finally get rid of the death penalty in the state, and introduced repeatedly. So now, describe this bill. What exactly this bill do? I mean, I know, but I like you to explain it for the.
Sure. So HB 269 is just a bill that basically bans executions for individuals with what's described as serious mental illness. And that has 4 distinctions in the bill, which is schizophrenia, schizoaffective, bipolar, and delusional disorders. And there's definitions and things as well to those. There are caveats in the bill. Those disorders cannot be triggered by what's described as a voluntary drug use or repeated criminal conduct in the bill. And basically the process is a pretty straightforward bill. The defendants got until 120 days prior to trial to present evidence that they have either a serious intellectual disability, which is already on the books, and a serious mental illness. And then they have 90 days prior to trial to basically determine whether or not that will be accepted. If it is accepted, then they are automatically excluded from receiving the death penalty. And the other thing I wanted to touch on about this bill is we're the second place to do that, and Ohio actually did that. And I just wanted to shout out the Ohioans to stop executions, and specifically Jennifer Pryor, organizer there, gave us a lot of good tips on just understanding when you're going to be in the home stretch and how we were able to kind of drill that down from there. So that's kind of, a regional we've been able to capitalize on.
One of the
I think it got you again.
Yeah, I unmuted and then they muted me. Okay, so sorry about that. But one of the things dealing with the legal system, and I was reading the bill and things like that, and it's like they're trying to say if it manifests in these orders manifesting from alcohol or drug use, that's like a escape loop for the state not to use it. And one of the things that I've learned in being on death row, with the individuals there and things like that, a lot of people that has committed the crimes, has some type of alcohol or drug use before. So have I freezed up or did he freeze up? Hello? Okay, did I freeze up?
Yeah, you did, but I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. So, like I was saying, one of the things about it is that a lot of people with mental illness, they tend to use drugs. I deal with a lot of people that is homeless right now. And they're, I help them try to get their disability and things like that. And one of the problems is that they all have some type of drug or alcohol abuse in their past or in their presence. And that's what fears me with this bill is that, I don't think that should play a part into this factor, because the mental illness is a mental illness. And some people don't know how to deal with their mental illness. Some people don't understand their mental illness. And some people have resorted to using alcohol as a way to cope with what they're going through. Like for instance, you put a person, when a person has schizophrenia, they put them on actually medication. So they actually give them drugs to deal with this, and I think that this bill is a great bill, but I do think that we have to be precautioned when it comes to that, because it's like we can recognize it, but the state would try to use it at its own disadvantage and try to say we justify, even though he got a mental illness, he was an alcoholic before. So, we can still give him the death penalty. And that's the scary thing about a lot of politicians put together bills, but it'd be a fine clause in that actually give them a loophole out of actually doing what is right. And so with that being said, I just wanted to address that issue with that. But my question to you is that how do you see this bill here in your state? I mean, do you feel it's going to be a real effective bill, or do you think it's something on the docket and then they're going to? Because I know here in, the reason I asked your state, because I'm not familiar, I know here in Florida, like for instance, we got a certain criteria with that IQ. With a certain IQ, you cannot get the death penalty. But the state has been ignoring that, and it's very rarely used. So I was just trying to understand here in your state, how do you think this bill would it be a bill that we could say is 100%? Well, you can't say 100%, but is it a strong bill that was the court system will hold up.
Yeah, so so I appreciate your first of all your thoughts on the death penalty, being somebody who had the experience. Like, we always want to talk folks like that, and we want to take that advice in. As far as in Kentucky specifically, there's a couple of, I'd say, buffers, for lack of a better term, that keep us from getting to a decision right now currently. And we know, like you mentioned in Florida, that that intellectual disability is kind of sidestepped, and we've seen it in other states as well. Kentucky has not had an execution 2008, and there's currently no plans in place to start that back up. So currently, right now, that particular kind of, it's not a court ordained pause, but it's a pause that's holding up due to drugs. And we believe from our organization as well, that we have right now in place a governor that is going to hold on to that as well. And even through our last governor, who was a staunch Republican, even some farther than staunch, I'll just say, named Matt Bevin, did not execute during that time. So we've had multiple iterations of governors that have went and have not executed. That's not to say that it can't be started up again, because we see that in other states. So we're hopeful that because of those particular pauses, that we'll be able to use this bill to build on and push for full abolition, because we're the Kentucky Coalition to abolish the death penalty. Our ultimate goal is to make sure it is abolished, and we're taking basically incremental steps that were built on, like I said, by Father Pat Delahanty, to get to that point. And we think that bill, we know actually from conversations that we've been having, that even talking to folks about mental illness and kind of explaining like what that's like, and using other examples from around the nation, that we're opening up conversations with folks that we didn't expect about their feelings on the death penalty as a whole. So what this bill has done for us, as we're kind of like in a holding pattern, like we don't think anything will fundamentally change. We're very hopeful, I would say, that nothing will fundamentally change right now. But we're hoping that this bill will open up those conversations to push us forward on abolition. And just to kind of speak on that real quick, we actually do have a Republican representative, pro-life representative, by the name of Stephen Meredith, who has filed an abolition bill 2 years in a row in our legislature. That bill just did not get any steam because, of course, the matter was AB 269. So we're hopeful that there can be an extended conversation now that 269's in, about what we can do, and how that doesn't go far enough. Because like you mentioned, you made a lot of really, really salient points about just the nature of mental illness and how that correlates not with drug use and things like that. And those are things that we brought up during our conversations with folks. So that we're hopeful that this is just basically an introductory conversation. And then in addition to that, we're also hearing from partners and public defenders that they're already able to utilize this language of this bill for clients right now. So we're hopeful that, just the same way all movements do, that people that are fighting on the good side are going to be able to take this and utilize it while we push for full abolition.
Yeah, because me personally, I never was interested in going into the military. I never was interested in going into the military. But, one of the things I've learned is that a lot of our veterans comes back after the military, especially when they don't went to war, and that, they're not receiving the right mental help in the first place. And, a lot of the military, whether they mentally impaired or not, what they do, they drink on the off days. It's even in movies, they go in the bar, we have fun. And I think that, I personally believe that here it is. When we send people off to war, we create victims, and we don't have nothing to protect. This type of bill will help protect, will help protect. Now, the thing about it is that we all understand that we have different human outlooks in our justice system that prohibited the function correctly. So it's like this state attorney may honor it, this state attorney may not honor it, and try to find a loophole on it, when I think that people need to understand that when you have a mental illness, a serious mental illness, you already tortured in life. And for you to serve your country, or you to be without getting the proper help in society, and then you make a mistake and go off the wall, it is the first thing they want to do is kill you like you're some animal. And I think this bill is one of those bills that actually protects people and put humanity back into the justice system, and give mental illness a consideration. But I have another question for you. Your organization, what are some of the things that your organization are working
on? So in addition, like I said, in addition to the work that we just did on House Bill 269, basically where we're at right now is we're just retooling and we're regrouping to go and make a full abolition push. And that includes just some of the same work that we were doing on the mental health bill, but kind of from a perspective of leading the charge. And that includes education. A lot of people don't understand some of the links that the death penalty has to some of the worst atrocities that we commit in America, especially lynching. So we're researching right now and just trying to get some of Kentucky's specific story about that connection between lynching and the death penalty. Because here, a lot of people focus on the horse race and the bourbon and the Kentucky basketball. But we also have a rich history, whether it be uplifting or something that requires a little bit more reflection. And we just want to make sure that that story is understood so that people do understand like what it means to have the death penalty in your state, in the Commonwealth. And we're also pushing on specifically the Commonwealth's attorneys in our two biggest counties, Jefferson and Fayette County. That's Lexington and Louisville. Those are the only two counties in our state that have double-digit death sentences handed down. 85 out of 120 counties in Kentucky have never handed down a death sentence. We've only had 3 executions. 2 of those, quote unquote, were voluntary executions. So when we talk about the death penalty in Kentucky, we talk about basically a tool of the criminal justice system that's kind of used against people for a myriad of reasons, because we're not actually giving anybody the death penalty, which is a good thing. But on the flip side, it's still being used as to put people between a rock and a hard place. So we're trying to find those cases as well when folks are willing to speak out about what's happening to them in those cases in the preliminary stages, and highlight that for people, because a lot of folks in Kentucky, because we've had just 3 executions, it's kind of an out of sight, out of mind thought process. And we want to let them know that even though we are not executing people currently, which once again, we always want to say is a good thing, there is still effect and ripples and waves that the death penalty is doing in our state. And if we want to be able to, excel and move on to the next thing, and kind of so many other issues in Kentucky, from gentrification to bail, amnesty programs, all these type of things are on the table. And if we want to build that power to take on the larger criminal justice system, then I think this is a good way to start. Not start per se, I guess, but it's a good way to get a victory and kind of take a bite out of the elephant.
Now, one of the things that's always asked, it's a question that's always asked. people hear about what's going on and everything, and they want to know, what can we do to help? So I'm asking you that question for people that's viewing this. What can they do to help your organization in the movement in Kentucky?
So first and foremost, we love it, and we'd love to have it. Anybody in Kentucky, even some folks outside of Kentucky, depending on the issue and what we're doing, we love volunteers. You can reach out at KCADP 2025@gmail.com. Just put in the subject volunteer, and we'll get you started with the process of intake and get you on a project. There's tons of things to do. There's emails to be sent. There's folks to be talked to. There's events to go to. So we can plug you in just about anywhere. Also, we always appreciate donations. If you go to kcadp.org, you can donate there, and you can also scroll down to the bottom of the page and sign up for our updates, where we'll be letting you know about any action items as far as legislation goes, or any other, perhaps other protests or kind of gatherings that we're doing in other points of the criminal justice system. So there's tons of things to do, and you can go to kcadp.org, and then also email us at kcadp@gmail.com.
So now I'm gonna go back to the bill. Ohio passed the bill, and it's much similar. I want people to understand that to get these things accomplished, to get them these bills on hand, it takes a lot of work behind it. As you see, it takes years of reintroducing the bill. And when I say, what can you do? I'm letting you know, whether you just sign a petition, whether you write a letter, or whether you voice your opinion at a protest, or whether you attend an event, whether you just tell somebody about what's going on, because that a lot of people who, when I go up and speak in front of the committee, yes, I'm standing there alone in front of the committee, and I'm giving my statement, I'm talking. But the problem is that if I'm up there alone, I'm not gonna get anywhere. They'll be like a used car salesman. They tell you what you want to hear, get you down to the dealership, and things change, or they just forget you to the side. But when they see that peoples are standing behind issues like this in numbers, then it makes it easier for when I'm going up there speaking to them, that they actually take some actions. Because you have to understand, a lot of the officials are voted in. So if they voted in, they're voted in by the people in society. And if they're not listening to the people in society, people in society is not going to vote for them. So guess what? That gives us the upper hand right now to say, okay, look, I'm in your area. I support this bill. I support this bill. We all support this bill. So he getting out, and it's time for vote. Guess what? He's gonna vote for this bill, because he gonna want to, when he runs for re-elections, he gonna want to hold his hand up and say, hey, I was with y'all. I voted for Bill HB 269. So we have to take advantage of that type of stuff, and it's very important by who you vote. But it's very simple of just taking a couple of minutes and going on these websites and just sign up, even if you just get in the newsletter. Because when you get in the newsletter, you might find something that is interesting. I know a lot of busy time and things, we got to go get your hair did and your nails did, ladies, and the men's got to go watch the football game and things like that. But we all got electronic devices we could just go on and 5 minutes, and while you're sitting there watching TikTok, go and sign a petition, get involved. Kentucky needs you, Florida needs you, many other states need you, because guess what? You're making a difference by saving people's lives this week. You're making a difference by helping people get justice, because those state attorneys that just seeking a conviction is they have no immunity. I mean, they have no consequences. They can go home and go to sleep, whether they convicted the right person, wrong person, whether they sending somebody to die and they killing them or whatever. They go home and go to sleep. Then you got the state attorneys that want to stand up with us, and that are standing up with us, and that are trying to make justice and put humanity back into our system. So, you know, that's just something for y'all people to think about, because Russell just gave y'all a link, you know, and I want to see how many people going to actually, and Russell, I want you to hit me up in about a week, and I want you to tell me how many new people that actually did this, because you know what? I am so sick and tired of people sitting here asking what can they do. We tell them what they can do, and then they turn around. We don't hear nothing from those people. They walk out of our events, they don't hear nothing. But then the minute one of their family or their loved ones turn around and get in some kind of trouble, they want to write our organizations. They want to hold their hands up and say, can y'all help us? You know, now the thing that hit back home that we was trying to teach you from the beginning, and now you want to come. So, Chris, give them that link one more time so they could go ahead and they can hit on that, and just even if they just sign your sign up with your newsletter or sign up with your organization.
So you can go to KCADP.org. And like I said, you can donate at the top of the page. And if you scroll to the bottom of the page, you can sign up for our updates. We'll have a full website rolling out pretty soon with a lot of information. We're actually in construction on that right now. So there'll be a lot more for folks into on there pretty soon. But you can also email us if you have any questions about volunteering or any other questions you want answered at KCADP2025@gmail.com. So those are both of the ways you can get in contact.
And, you know, I want to talk about witness innocence for a second, right? So we offer programs like A&J. I don't know if you heard about our A&J program. And we offer, in this A&J program, is 3 death row exonerees and one of our attorney facilitators. And we offer this to go in to state attorneys, police, the police force, or any criminal justice area, even at schools. You know, we do a lot of that at schools. So I want everyone to spread the word about our A&J program, and those that's looking at working at the school or working at the justice system, you know, public defender's office, state attorneys, because I got all those type of viewers. I even got judges viewing me now, and I want the people to start taking advantage of those A&J projects. You know, you can reach us at witnessinnocence.org. You can sign up for our newsletter and get updates. You know, you can stay in tune. If you sign up, you'll stay in tune to when my show actually comes on. So y'all get to see my pretty face, and I'm hanging out with great people like Russell, you know, and we feeding the education and having fun and having some real live, because this is not a show that is actually pre wrote down or anything. You know, Russell might have his notes or things like that. They don't feel, but we're telling you about things that's really happening. That's really happening. For y'all don't know, a lot of people that's been executed has been mentally ill. How do we, as people of society, look actually killing a person because they're mental ill? I mean, you have people out there. Uh, uh, I forgot her name. Allison, you might need to help me out in the chat. Melissa case that they was just trying to execute. Um, Melissa Lucio. Look at this woman. This woman was, I mean, she was beaten, raped, everything. And they took her to the police department. The police department took her back to the abuser. So what kind of mental state would this lady be in? I mean, it was somebody that did that type of crime cannot be a stable person or a normal person. It has to be some type of mental illness there to do it. So what do? Okay, because society, most people in society not very humane because they got their own life, they uppity or whatever they may be, and they may be want to be tough on crime and things that don't even understand what the life of crime and life of the justice system is really like, and they just form an opinion because that's the way they was raised. Like if a person is, and I don't care what color you are, whether you black, white, green, or blue, whatever. If you was raised to say black people is this way, we don't want to be, that's how you gonna act. Because we got some blacks that act like they prejudice against black too. You get what I'm saying? That's in the family. So if people are raised to say, oh, that person's sick, instead of addressing the mental illness and they want to talk about the person, then we got a screwed up society. Our justice system don't need to be fixed. We people need to be fixed. But right now, it's like Russell needs your help. Witness Innocent needs your help. FADP, many organizations represent justice around the world are trying to fight this criminal justice reform, and we need your help. So I'm saying next week, Russell gonna hit me up. I'm gonna see how many names on that thing. You feel me? I'm gonna see how many people sign up. And Russell, make sure you tell me how many people hit you up. All right. So we get close to the end of the show. I done dropped the Red Bull, so I'm getting hyper with it. I really want to go on, but I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna do that. So is there anything else that you would like to share before we bring this to a close?
Only thing I want to do is I want to make sure that folks, I guess, understand that it wasn't just Kentucky Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty or one representative or another person. It was a coalition of people. From the state side, the Catholic Conference of Kentucky, NAMI, ACLU, Kentuckians for Commonwealth, Smart Justice Advocates, Kentucky Smarter on Crime, also Eighth Amendment Project, Catholic Mobilizing Network, Death Penalty Action, Death Penalty Focus, from a national perspective, came in and helped us. And then in addition to that, we also had to activate individuals, including the activist class and just supporters of KCADP, getting hundreds of folks to call into the legislature and voice their opinion for a yes vote on HB 269. So I want folks, whether they're watching for Florida, for Witness to Innocence, from whatever state will see this, to understand that you got to get a whole bunch of people to the table. And that includes just regular people, everyday people. And without those regular everyday people that are speaking on behalf of what we're talking about with this death penalty, we're coming in as organizers and telling people that this needs to be stopped. Unless regular people are coming to the forefront and demanding this, then they'll just ignore us. So y'all are just as important, if not more important, than the folks that you see, quote unquote, on the ground, quote unquote, leading the effort. It's the people power is really what does it every time.
Okay, I see a question. Allison, is it okay for me to answer that question, right? Okay, I'm gonna answer this question. The question was from Will Null, and it does race play a part in the criminal justice system. I'm not gonna give my opinion on that because I do believe it is. I believe it highly plays a part on our system. But I'm gonna ask you to give me your point of view on that.
I wasn't going to even touch on it too much. I'll give you one statistic. So we also, a thing that you can view on our page at kcadp.org is our report on Kentucky's death penalty. And like I mentioned before, even though we're not executing people, we're still pursuing death sentences. And you are 20 times more likely to receive a death sentence based upon the 82 cases that we studied in Kentucky. You are 20 times more likely if it is a Black male perpetrator / defendant and a white woman victim / whatever. So, and those particular stats were done by Frank Baumgartner of UNC. And through our research just in Kentucky, we just try to figure out what's going on. It replicates across the country. A lot of the things that kind of started this country, of course, slavery being America's original sin, a lot of the things that you see and the levers in the criminal justice system are directly flowing from slavery. The reason we have the death penalty is because they were hoping that they could stop public executions of Black folks by codifying it into the justice system. So race is always going to be prevalent in criminal justice outcomes, and we always want to make sure that folks understand that and never lose sight of that. And we're always going to be trying to unravel those. So that's my answer.
And I'm gonna just make this example, and I'm gonna end this show. Here in Florida, the death penalty was reenacted in 1976, right? So through all that time of execution, and we stopped on our 99th. We was about to do the 100th execution, but it stopped from 1976. So 99 people then executed. It wasn't until our last, I think it was the second or third before the last, that a person had been executed for having a Black victim. Yeah, there has never been an execution, but that one in the state of Florida where the victim was actually Black. Every victim else was white. So that don't answer the question as race plays a part. Race plays a part not only as in judging in the justice system, but the actions they take with the death penalty too. But with that being said, I'm gonna say I thank everybody for joining us for Cruel Justice episode. Don't forget to go to witnesscitizen.org, and I thank everybody for joining. Bye-bye.